Dear viewers and ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the panel discussion Reimagining Mass Transportation in the Post-COVID World, part of second edition of ET Government Digitech Conclave 2021. Technology and innovation is bringing the ultimate revolution in the transportation industry. The relationship between economic growth and infrastructure investment is very evident. The faster the economy grows, the need for faster and reliable mode for transport for movement of goods and people. Growth of Indian economy is driving the demand for the transportation industry. Smart mobility is driven by technologies such as IoT, big data, artificial intelligence, and data engineering. Lightweight vehicles, drones for delivery of logistics, hyperloop, flying taxis, and autonomous cars are among some future transportation technologies likely to impact India soon. On behalf of ET government, I, Arpit Gupta, welcome our esteemed panelists. Ladies and gentlemen, to lead the panel, I am joined by eminent leaders and senior bureaucrats. I welcome Sri Ashish Kumar Singh, Additional Chief Secretary, Department of Home, Transport and Ports, Government of Maharashtra. I also welcome Sri K.R. Jyotilal, Principal Secretary, Transport and Managing Director, Kochi Metro Rail Limited, Government of Kerala. Sri Shiva Yogi C. Kalsar, Chairman and Managing Director, Karnataka State Road Transport Corporation, Government of Karnataka. Sri Vinay Kumar Singh, Managing Director, National Capital Region Transport Corporation, NCRTC. And Dr. Rajendra Jagtap, Smart City and Mobility Expert and former Chairman and Managing Director of Pune Mahanagar Parivahan Mahamandal Limited, Government of Maharashtra. Let me begin the discussion. My first question to Ashish Kumar Singh. Sir, COVID-19 pandemic has been the driver of rapid digitization in India. What is your initial remark on reimagining mass transportation in the Maharashtra state with the implementation of solutions like intelligent transportation system, smart urban traffic control systems for efficient traffic management? Over to you.
Arpit, what COVID-19 has done to India and to the world is very different from what it was in terms of mobility before the pandemic hit us. Consumers are now intensely focused on health and have altered many long-standing habits and preferences to avoid infection. In the mobility sector, this means that many passengers now favor transport modes perceived as safer and more hygienic. Suddenly, private cars are back and shared ride seems to be out. Working from home is on the rise, again with the goal of preserving safety, while business travel and all the mobility services attached to it, be it air flying, taxis, e-hailing, are in low demand. The best laid plans of mobility players appear to be in tatters. It may seem that the acceleration of future mobility has come to a halt, but this first impression overlooks recent developments that will have tremendous impact on mobility's future. And these developments are in terms of redefining the lanes to create more spaces for bikes and scooters, government incentives to help the automotive industry to encourage the use of carbon neutral solutions, and stimulated development of electric vehicles. In another shift arising from the pandemic, consumers are increasingly turning to digital channels, from convenient food deliveries to streaming services, and they now expect mobility players to expand their online offerings. Such fundamental changes, along with other recent developments, are prompting many mobility players and the government to reimagine the future of mobility. They had already been adjusting their strategies to the emergence of autonomous, shared, electric, and common mobility, which meant autonomous cars, which meant connected cars, which meant electrified vehicles, and of course, aggregators, which prompted shared mobility. They are now going even further to account for the pandemic's impact on consumer behavior, policy making, and regional economies. I would now actually leave it to you to be more focused on the next set of questions so that we can address all these issues independently.
Right, sir. After understanding the perspective from Maharashtra, let's move on to Kerala. My next question to K.R. Jyotilal. Sir, your views on accessible, connected, inclusive, affordable and intelligent transport for Kerala. How are you leveraging cutting-edge technology to enhance operational efficiency and providing hassle-free safe travel experience to the commuters?
Sorry, A.K. Singh sir has mentioned, the COVID has brought a lot of changes. Actually, it's a it's a correction in in our way of thinking. So one is contactless payments has become increased, because to avoid the spread of COVID, you need social distancing as well as contactless payment. So digital technologies are going to be on the rise. So in fact, we brought out something called the common open mobility networks, where you can integrate various modes of transport. There's a protocol which is developed so that irrespective of the platform in which you are operating, you can integrate. Because the digital world is something where 0 and 1 only are there. So the integration is much more easier than in the actual world. So that is one thing. Zero cash. Actually, if I put in a nutshell, the strategy is nothing but 5 zeros: zero cash, zero emissions, zero congestion, zero waste, and vision zero. That means zero accidents. So one is the digital technologies, e-courts have become a reality in Cochin. Enforcement becomes automatic AI technologies, so that Vahans are the ones you integrate. You can challans are generated online. Digital cards. We have brought some concept called a Codes on Travel card, which is a digital card which you can download it. So zero emission, so that even electric mobility as well as the hydrogen as a fuel, that is being merged. That's a great change which is happening. Carbon economy to hydrogen economy, zero congestion. Just like the planning the city, so that one of the challenges which is going to come is the more private vehicles are coming to the space. So unless we plan for their cities, it is going to be much congested. We have got metropolitan transport authorities which are planning the cities transport planning, integrating with the urban planning, that is zero congestion, converting the zero waste, basically converting the waste into energy, and zero vision zero. That means planning for the least accident and most efficient modes, like including hyperloop, semi-high speed trains, and using waterways as other mode of transport and for the goods. So this in nutshell is what we are planning in our state. Thank you.
My next question to Sivayogi C. Kalsar. Sir, what innovative initiatives are being taken by Karnataka government to foster multimodal integration and encourage mobility as a service?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Karnataka has been a leader in some of the initiatives in the IT sector as well as in the public sector transport sector as well. However, this particular COVID has brought in a lot of new initiatives, though some of the adverse impacts were also there, but definitely some of the positive impacts are also highly noticeable. As to your specific question regarding the multimodal integration and encouraging mobility as a service, as you're aware that the multimodal mode of service of transport could involve both cycling or walking or even a taxi service or a first and last mile connectivity for not just the bus, but also could be the train services as well as the air services. I'm informed by the Kerala counterpart that they are also extending to the waterways as well. So this is just to show that the Transport Corporation can have a great impact on the multimodal transport network as a means of service as it is. We have an institutional network called Department of Urban Land Transport, which is acting as the nodal agency to coordinate amongst the various modes of transport. And right now we are having Kempegowda bus stand in Bangalore as one of the major bus stands in the entire state of Karnataka, which is situated in about 50 odd acres of land, where we have a direct connectivity with the regular train services, the metro rail services, as well as the Mofussil bus stand and the city bus stand. We also have a direct approach with the city taxi services as well as the auto rickshaws, etc. We have a separate bus lane for the city services, and also we have enabled separate cycle lanes also. So this is a multimodal modes of transport. Even in the villages, we have, for example, somebody comes on a two-wheeler, goes up to the main road, and from there he takes up the transport hooks onto the bus, etc. But these are all parts and parcel of the multimodal activity, which obviously gives the ease of transport for the traveling public. Here, I must mention that the role of major technical companies like the Google or the IBM or the Cisco, these are the multi-million-dollar companies which actually are there to promote smart urban mobility, and that is very encouraging. And definitely Bangalore, which is supposed to be the Silicon Valley, is having this kind of a receptivity. And also the role of application developers most of the startup companies are also trying to give in their particular thing to ensure that we have this integrated multimodal integration as a status now. Now we also have the e-bikes coming in. The Karnataka has come out with the e-bikes, wherein the licenses have been given to almost about 10,000 bike operators. The pillion rider will be taking the short transfer to maybe the bus stand or the metro rail station, etc. So this definitely will be acting like a facilitator to improve the ridership and have a seamless transfer of the facility for the person who is intended to travel. So some of these measures are really very important for the importance of the whole project of seamless travel. Besides Bangalore, we also have tier 2 and tier 3 cities in Karnataka state. For example, we have called smart cities concept in Mysuru, in Tumkur and Davangere, which are tier 2 concept of cities, wherein this connectivity of intermodal transfer of transport facilities is being made available. All in all, in the next 5 to 10 years, we can see an exponential growth on integration of these intermodal transfer of transport services, which could definitely aid in ultimately mobility, acting as a service to the transport sector as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kalsar. Now, let me ask the next question to Vinay Kumar Singh. Mr. Singh, NCRTC is mandated for implementing India's first regional rapid transit system project across the NCR, ensuring a balanced and sustainable urban development through better connectivity and access. How has COVID impacted project implementation, and what technologies is NCRTC leveraging to efficiently manage the project and deliver it on time? Over to you, Mr. Singh.
Thank you, Arpit. In fact, all of us, we know that COVID has hit us badly, whether it is a project progress on the ground or while working in the office. So we are presently in the implementation mode. That means we are not operating the transport system, which we are executing as on date. But when we started NCRTC as an organization, we started working on many IT tools and many IT technologies, which have supported us during the COVID times. So the fundamental technology which we are using is common data environment. That helps us in collaborating with not only within the organization, but outside, our designers, our contractors, and any other stakeholder with whom we are working on a regular basis. Other than this, as an organization, we have adopted building information modeling, where we use 3D images or the 3D designs for any structure which we are constructing. And the designers across the globe can work in a collaborative way on internet and do the same design, while at the same time, there may be 10 or 12 designers working on the same model across the world and within the country also. And we are able to work seamlessly on that. This kind of use of technologies has helped us in during COVID days also to go ahead without any stoppages in terms of project implementation. But yes, on the site, things came to a standstill for a few months. But while following the COVID protocol, we could restart the work, and presently we are working with the full force. So beyond this, as far as project monitoring is concerned, we have developed our own IT tool for project monitoring called Speed. Through this particular tool, we are able to manage the project and get the feedback from the field almost on daily basis, on real-time basis. That helps us in planning our next move, and which is coming very handy. In fact, not only that we are helping, it is helping ourselves, we are helping other projects also in supporting them through this tool.
Thank you, Mr. Singh. Now, let me go to Dr. Rajendra Jagtap. Dr. Jagtap, COVID-19 pandemic has been the driver of rapid digitization in India. We all know we currently are reeling under a COVID crisis. What are your initial remarks on reimagining mass transportation in the Maharashtra state? As you have worked a lot in Maharashtra state in various capacities, you have worked in the Pune Parivahan Mahamandal, you have worked with Pune Smart Cities. What are your remarks?
So, Arpit, when we talk about Maharashtra and Pune in specific, what we have come usually across is post the COVID pandemic, people are still skeptical about the public transportation at large. Even after the first lockdown, we went in for a large amount of sterilization cleaning of buses, and with a large amount of social distancing and getting an assurance for the people, we still found that the people are not ready to come up and accept the system as a whole. It took its own time of about more than 3 months for the people to come across and travel in the buses. Gradually, what happened is we see that the acceptance of the same was going up. But if we compare the records from the Regional Transport Authority of the number of vehicles in the private sector that are being sold, especially two-wheelers and smaller vehicles, we see that there is a rapid rise in the amount of vehicles that people have been buying up. So what we see that this COVID pandemic has brought down the overall use of the public transportation at large, where people are still fearful and they prefer to travel in a place like Pune in their own private transportation as such. Compared to the same thing in Bombay, what we see is even if the locals in Bombay are down, the number of passengers in the buses have gone up, and people there, because of the traffic and the space, have not yet moved to the the private transportation on a much larger scale. But all tier 2 and tier 3 cities in Maharashtra have adopted new modes of transportation, especially the two-wheeler and the three-wheeler. So this was one big trend that we could notice. Post that, what has happened is when we went in for revamping of the whole public transportation, we came across this additional costs and everything that we had to incur. So the scheduled routes were altered as per the need, where we had to keep that social distance and a minimum population of less than 50% per bus, where the restrictions on behalf of the local body as well as the state government were on a much larger scale. So these were the impacts which the public transportation, which is already stressed for finances, had to undergo. And the available resources were put in to cater to a much lesser population and deploying large amount of buses as well as the staff and resources at place. So COVID has its own impact on the economical outplay of this whole system. Yes, technology has been an imparting factor here, wherein what happens is with reference to the apps and the APIs that we made available through the public, where the availability of buses were and that kind of information was passed on a much larger scale, and specialized buses were arranged to few of the sectors that were required, say for the IT industry in some scales in Pune, to the government entities that require this special kind of services, and especially the industrial townships that are in the vicinity, which gradually opened up. So we could see that new sectors emerging gradually over a period of time, but some sectors that have totally closed down, especially the school bus sector. We had a large number of buses that were catering to the school children as well as the college crowd, which is totally a no-no in this COVID situation. So the situation with reference to COVID that we see, with reference to the passenger utility as well as the availability of services for the citizens at large, we see a very distinct change into this whole environment in Pune and Maharashtra at large. I think the same may be replicable and seen in other parts of India too.
Now let me go to again Mr. Ashish Kumar Singh. Sir, road safety is a very important issue and an area of concern. India ranks first in the number of road fatalities across the world, with the most unsafe metrics of road level. Your views on creating a safe and reliable transport option for movement?
The maximum number of fatalities that are happening today on road mishaps is for pedestrians and two-wheelers. A couple of reasons which I have analyzed since I've been in this job for some time now would include the quality of road infrastructure that we have in our cities as well as between intercities, the quality of drivers that we are actually producing in terms of the training that the drivers undergo before they actually start driving, and over and above that, this whole idea of complete lack of integration amongst various modes of transport, which are such that they can be safe and they can be seamless. So some of the things that we are trying to do in Maharashtra include improving road infrastructure. So we are building a new highway between Mumbai and Nagpur, which is an expressway. We have an expressway already, which is the first expressway which India has between Mumbai and Pune. The problem of training drivers is also what we are addressing in the transport department by bringing in automated driving testing centers. As you would be aware, we are perhaps the first state where you can give the test for a learning license sitting at home, and you can give it as many times. If you keep failing, you can keep revising your questions and appearing again and again. So there is no stress on anyone wanting to quickly pass the test, because otherwise you may have to go back to a center and deal with some RTOs and all. So you can actually do the test as many number of times and practice the road rules better. We are also trying to improve upon the testing that we do for vehicles. So we have lots of automated testing tracks that we are setting up. The first one of them anyway was set up in Nashik in Maharashtra for the first time in India. And now we are planning to do it in all the 35 districts of the state. Our tenders for both automated driving testing centers as well as automated vehicle testing centers would come out hopefully before the end of this month. We have recently also announced our new electric vehicle policy to improve the pollution that is impacting cities like Mumbai. But that, of course, is not directly linked to road safety. We have also tried to see that all the black spots that we have on various roads are immediately removed. To reduce fatalities, we have now trauma centers set up in almost every 100 kilometers of any highway, and by and large you should be able to get to a trauma center within 15 minutes to 30 minutes of an accident is what we are currently working on. One of the challenges which we have is the availability of some specialty doctors who can man these trauma centers, but the centers are in place and at least some very minimal assistance can be quickly given. We have also got the 108 ambulance facility wherein it promises reaching any place within 30 minutes of the call. So that these are ambulances which have doctors on board and which have, many of them have ICU facility on board. These are some of the initial initiatives that we have taken to reduce road accidents. And at the same time, to improve upon the overall health, as I said, our new electric vehicle policy has been very, very well received. It is perhaps today, at least, one of the most forward-looking policies that any state has in India.
Sir, how have you been getting support from the private sector?
Well, as you would be aware, Maharashtra manufactures the largest number of ICE automobiles in the country, be it buses, be it cars, be it two-wheelers. I mean, all the top names in the country, their manufacturing facilities based out of Maharashtra, be it the Tatas, the Mahindras, the Volkswagen. General Motors now, of course, doesn't exist because it's been bought over, but its plant was in Maharashtra. You have the Mercedes, the Skoda. I mean, you name the Bajaj's produce two-wheelers here. So you name all the top automobile OEM manufacturer OEMs are all based out of Maharashtra. We are hoping that a similar kind of thing we would get on electric vehicles, and that's why our policy, both on the supply side as well as on the demand side for electric vehicles, is currently very, very well received. And you must have seen that there are many television shows which have happened based on our policy. So I would say that the response from the private sector for Maharashtra has been exceptionally good. I mean, all the top aggregators in the country also are operating out of Maharashtra. So there is a lot of technology which is also coming in. But we still have a long way to go. We are also therefore one of the highest road accident affected states in the country, which is not a very good parameter to have. In fact, it's a matter of shame that we are there. But because we have the largest number of automobiles that operate in any state, we also have this challenge of high road accidents.
Let me go to Mr. K.R. Jyotilal. Sir, can you please underline the role of your private partners who are helping you implement your projects and your views on electric vehicles?
One of the points which Ashish Kumar Singh sir has mentioned about the road safety, that is very paramount importance. Definitely, we are also one of the states which is having more than 4,000 deaths. Now, fortunately, thanks to COVID as well as interventions by the department, we could bring it down by 39%. Though the Brasilia declaration says by 2020, we should reduce the accident deaths by 50%. So we are looking at, we are aiming at zero. Actually, we could do in Sabrimala pilgrim season, we could bring down the last 3 years. It is zero death. So that was our that was the beginning of a new project called Safe Kerala. Safe Shabarimala we implemented. So on that models, we have now started something called Safe with the enforcement. There are 4 components to it. Basically engineering, where you identify the black spots. Now IRAD softwares are there by which the policeman itself will take the GPS coordinates. You get the automatically which are the black spots. Enforcement, that is where the police as a motor vehicle department both have got role to play, and they are we have got a separate enforcement wing exclusively for doing it, as well as I mentioned about the e-code, so that challan gets generated. You only need, we have got a WhatsApp number in which you can, any citizen can send the video, then automatically we send the challan is generated, goes into Vahan Sarathi. Then AI camera, artificial intelligence based cameras, which can detect, person without zigzag driving or having without wearing helmet or any of the violations which can be detected or unauthorized parking. That is very common, at least in Kerala. So those cases, the challan gets generated in the Vahan Sarathi. Education is another important, where we are including this in the syllabus of the school, so that at least there is some mark for people with who there will be some questions, at least 5 marks for in the school as well as in the +2. Then trauma care, the emergency care. In fact, we have got a very well networked list of hospitals and ambulance networks which work with the hospitals, and a lot of private hospitals are there, so which takes care of the trauma care. So that is as far as the other part is concerned. Now coming back to electric mobility, we have got a very highly ambitious target of 1 million electric vehicles in another by 2025. 2 lakh two-wheelers and maybe the 3-wheelers, then and 4-wheelers, as well as some 3,000 buses and 100 boats. The boats part, we could with the KfW funding, we are launching the first solar boat in the country. We brought it. Now we are going with a water metro. Around 76 boats are under construction. Then the bus part, we are looking at LTO batteries or the hydrogen fuel cell. Trucks and the bus, we have got a pilot project sanction for Trivandrum to Kochi fuel cell. In fact, we are looking at green hydrogen as well as a LNG based, basically gas based hydrogen generation, which already Cochin Refinery has got a capacity of 3 lakh cubic meters per hour. They can easily ramp up to 4 lakh cubic meters, and Air Products USA is doing that work. Cochin International Airport, the world's first international airport to be 100% run on solar. We have got a floating solar in the golf course adjoining, where we are able to generate power at 2.5 rupees, and which is we are now along with IOC, we are converting to green hydrogen for the feeder bus from between Kochi Metro and the Cochin International Airport will be run on the 10 hydrogen buses have been now sanctioned by government. Next stage will be how to export, how to become a reliance to self-reliance. Basically, whether we can become net exporter of energy with the solar and the wind power which we have got. So floating windmills, whether we can put in the maybe 50 kilometers in the sea and generate green hydrogen. And if ISFS charges are waived by government of India, you can generate power anywhere and take it to any place and generate green hydrogen and take carbon dioxide from the air, make methanol. And now methanol means engines are going to come. We, along with Ashok Leyland and IIT Madras, is just working on M100 engines, which can replace the diesel forever. That means our oil import bill is going to come down, and probably India can become a net export of energy. So that is what we are looking at as far as the e-mobility as well as electrified mobility is concerned. And 2-wheelers and 3-wheelers and 4-wheelers have already caught up. We have set up almost 68 charging centers across the state. More on the coming. 30 by IOC is apart from 68 by KSEB. Another 30 by the IOC is already set up. Now more private sector participation is expected in this. We would like to be the first hydrogen economy in the country and become a net export of energy. Then apart from this, we have got a high-speed rail project, semi-high-speed, which is in the final stage for approval. It is a zero carbon emission project. Along the 24-meter right-of-way, which we will have, we are planning to put hydrogen pipeline so that across the state we will be able to supply the fuel hydrogen, so green hydrogen. That is what our ambition is. So we are getting excellent support from and the participation of the private industry. In fact, a lot of proposals, including China, Russia, all these countries, we have got investors which are waiting for investing in these green projects. Thank you.
I'm just jumping on to MD KSRTC, Mr. Shiv Yogi, Sir, my next question to you is, in which key areas are you adopting technologies, the emerging technologies like artificial intelligence, IoT, cloud, and are you using any technologies or digitization to enhance operational efficiency in Karnataka?
Yeah, definitely. In fact, I'm sure other corporations or states also must be doing the same thing. In Karnataka, we are adopting this technology in terms of both operational parameters as well as being in the service industry in the context of hearing the public grievances of the citizens as well. In terms of operational parameters, we have a three-tier structure starting from the depot, and at the intermediate level, we have the division, and at the corporate level, at the central office level. So we do have this kind of supervisory structure wherein all the parameters of both mechanical as well as the route rationalization and the real-time data is being collected, and data analytics has been utilized in finalization of these route categories. And the information regarding the routes is very much important for our scheduling purposes as well as for our HR purposes also. In terms of the HR also, the human resources, which forms the basic human potential of our organization, we have introduced various measures of leave management services, including which is available on the real databases, etc. And making use of the iCloud also, the technology has really evolved to such an extent that now, of course, the persons at the time of reservations, cancellation, refund, everything is easily available in real-time basis. So I think the technology is a great initiative, which is clearly demarcating the kind of seamless travel experience for the benefit of the citizen. Thank you.
Thank you. Let me go to Mr. Vinay Kumar Singh. In which key areas you, as your organization, NCRTC, adopting technologies? And are you also using any technologies to enhance operational efficiency?
In fact, we use technology as an enabler, and we use technology very extensively, not only in project implementation, but in operation and maintenance also. So just to share with you 2-3 things which we are doing where you may be interested, is that we are going for a integrated asset management system. So these railway systems, as you know, are quite complex, and we deploy a large number of assets. These are asset intensive systems, and we have a very comprehensive program. We are shifting all the data, whatever is available with us in the BIM environment. We'll be transferring this data in a very, very comprehensive way to the asset management system. Now, this asset management system is supported by not only the big data analytics, but artificial intelligence as well as augmented reality. These tools will be used not only in managing the assets, but in maintenance and repairs also. So just around the asset management system, we are using technologies and in a very, very integrated and comprehensive way. Other than this, we are using artificial intelligence for controlling the mob or assessing the total number of people who have entered the station or who are at the platform. Or we are also going to use the IoT devices all across the system for monitoring the health of the system, monitoring the health of the equipments, the machines which are deployed in the field, and assisting the controllers sitting in the main operation control center to take real-time decisions, or predicting the maintenance requirements at various points on the system. Other than this, we are using large number of IT tools, whether it is for simulation studies, for operation simulation, or for designing the track, those kind of alignments, very complicated kind of applications which we have. Normally, these kind of applications were handled by the international experts now in our country. But NCRTC has developed these capabilities within the organization, and we have the requisite softwares, and we have developed some of these, customized them for railway requirement, for our requirement, and we are using them in a big way to enable various things within the organization and at the interface with the customer also.
Dr. Jagtap, there are a lot of talk about multimodal integration and mobility as a service. What are your views to improve the mass transportation in India?
So we see that multimodal transportation is something which has its own kind of an impact that is going to happen. So for when we look at a place like Pune and in multiple other cities, we have one state transport unit or a public transport body, which is almost a monopolistic kind of an organization which was providing bus services. Most of the tier 2 cities have gradually now adopting to metro, where we in the city of Pune are likely to have our metro becoming functional in another 3 to 4 months. So we had one more public transportation that came up and banged us upon us. So what happens is basically this mobility of multimodal transportation where intercity buses, that is from the state transport side, within the city buses provided by the city transport body, interstate transport that has to happen through railways or the airlines. So all those kinds of integration is something which everybody is very positive enough for. Earlier, what we used to see that people are not very keen. Even if we had our bus stops and everything which were located quite in the vicinity of these railway stations. However, integrating our bus routes and schedules with reference to the timetable that is available with the railways is happening for the first time in the last 2 or 3 years. So that is where we see that as per the need of the customer and the passenger, requirements have been exchanged. Technology again is playing a very big factor where we say that the common mobility card that has been introduced by Mahua is something which is becoming a reality and getting accepted across different modes of transportation. And again, to take you to another level, here in Pune, what happened is after the formation of the Urban Metropolitan Transport Authority, we are integrating our apps and aligning them together. So what happens is a multi-journey transport can be taken up by any passenger. So if he wants to move from one mode to another, is something that is making a reality. Besides the public transportation, what we're talking about is integration with the auto rickshaws, Ola and Ubers is something has come up as a welcome step. And new startups have come up with innovative ideas, which also is helping. So the passenger is becoming the king here. And we can see that all public private transportation and other allied agencies are coming together to ensure that for any person to plan a journey from point A to B within the city, if he wants to move through multiple modes or different kinds of transport, that is something which can happen as a reality. And it is a streamlined, very simple decision making and easy method to plan it as well as to pay for it.
Thank you for sharing these very pertinent views. Mr. Singh, I would also like to understand from you, how is the rapid shift to digital shaping the future of mobility in your state? In which key areas are you adopting technologies like artificial intelligence, IoT, cloud, data analytics?
See, most of it actually is yet to really come into play. Because even today, the dominant players are the ICE vehicles. Till the time we completely move on to electric vehicles, IoT and other digitization within the vehicular technology is yet to happen. However, in terms of booking and in terms of aggregators bringing these technologies for shared mobility, I think we are very, very well, we are very advanced now. So whether it be the Olas, the Ubers, the new two-wheeler aggregators which are coming into play, the new aggregators who are bringing in three-wheelers into the game, all of them are actually bringing in part of this, but the entire gamut of services which can have a tremendous impact on the overall mobility scene in the country is still to really take place. So this is work in progress. And I personally feel that the coming 4 or 5 years is going to be extremely exciting for the transport sector in India.
Mr. Jyotilal, my next question to you is, how are you planning to create a safe and reliable transport option through mobile to mobility? And you are also implementing World's first open mobility network called Kochi Open Mobility Network. How are your plans shaping up?
In fact, we had already launched the Kochi Open Mobility Network. It was funded by Nandan Nilekani's Beacon Foundation. So it's nothing but a protocol which will bring in all the modes of transport, whether it is you may operate Ola, Uber, Kochi One app or Yatri app, or you have got various apps. So everything can operate so that it brings basically there no intermediation. The cost of intermediation is not there, and the data security, no one owns the data. So otherwise, it is all data privacy was one big issue with Uber and other companies. So it brings both the consumer as well as the provider of the app. Basically, mobility is becoming mobility as a service is emerging. Actually, we launched with 1,000 taxis. Now the drivers have been trained. Now 25,000 autos, 1,000 private buses, around 400 KSRTC buses, Kochi Metro and Water Metro. which is also probably first water metro in the country with LTO batteries, is becoming a reality. We are bringing all of them together so that each one benefits by that. You get more ridership in metro, more ridership for the taxi velos, and you basically it becomes a citizen-centric approach or a demand-driven approach than a supply-driven approach which was there earlier. I think that is transforming the mobility, and we are now slowly expanding to other modes of transport also.
Vinay Kumar Singh, I would also like to know your views on the role of RRTS in the overall ecosystem of the next-gen mobility.
When we came in NCR, then already Delhi Metro was there. There are a national railway. This civilization means airport is there. We have a large number of bus stands. So from the day one, we started working on a multimodal integration scheme, which is central to our planning. So what we are trying to do is we are integrating all these modes of transport, public transports. Our corridors are going to airport, to important bus stations, interstate bus stations, railway stations, and within Delhi, out of 8 lines of Delhi Metro, we are integrating with 7 lines of Delhi Metro seamlessly. So at these junction points or integration points, the commuters will not be coming to the street level. Either they will be at the foot overbridge level or at the subway, so that there is no cross movement of various modes of transport and everything becomes very, very simple and seamless. So multimodal integration is going to help all the public transports within Delhi. So not only that, we are physically linking them on our platform, which will be basically our app on which we are working presently. We will be linking that services on through IT-based applications, not only in the tariff timetabling, but linking as you travel on the system, how you move from one system to another. At the common platform, electronic platform, these service providers will come and make the life of commuter much more comfortable by the help of technology.
I'll again go back to Mr. Ashish Kumar Singh. Sir, can you please throw some light on the Maharashtra's EV policy, your views on next-gen mobility and accelerating adoption of hybrid and electric vehicles? Over to you.
As far as Maharashtra's EV policy is concerned, I just told you that we have announced a bunch of incentives, both for demand side as well as on supply side. On the supply side, we have said that we will be providing incentives to the OEMs, which are better than the best that the country offers for setting up a gigawatt scale battery manufacturing here and for setting up components as well as vehicle manufacturing anywhere in Maharashtra. On the demand side, we have said that we will be providing subsidy over and above the FAME 2 subsidy being given to the extent of 5,000 kilowatt per hour with additional 5,000 kilowatt per hour for early bird buyers. So, and all these incentives are routed through the OEMs. Therefore, the customers really do not have to worry about it. The OEMs have to come and get the reimbursement from the state government. And hence, it makes it a lot more easier. Everything is going to be online as we have announced in our policy. On the demand side, as I just said, that we have also said that both the incentive is available both for charging infrastructure as well as for vehicles which have swappable batteries. So even if you sell vehicles with swappable batteries, the incentive is available for the OEM. For 50% of the incentive is available for the OEM and 50% goes to the battery manufacturer. Apart from this, as I said, D+ category is what we have identified for industrial investment as one where the most backward districts are concerned. So the incentives are the highest in these districts. These are Naxal affected districts. These are districts which are otherwise considered backward. We have now said that for any EV mega project, this incentive would be available anywhere in Maharashtra. So even if you set it up very close to Mumbai or to Pune, the incentive would be equivalent to what you would have got had you set it up in the most backward area. And that, as you are aware, is equivalent to what is perhaps better than the most backward areas in other states, because we already were better than many of them. So this is where we stand today in terms of electric vehicles. We have also said in our policy that we will convert a minimum of 25% of our public transport to electric transport. And as you would be aware, Maharashtra State Road Transport Corporation has 18,500 buses. So their 25% works out to almost about 5,000 buses, which we hope to do by the end of the term of the policy. We also have other very large urban transport services in BEST in Mumbai, PMPML in Pune, NMT, which is the Navi Mumbai Transport in Navi Mumbai Corporation, TMT, which is the Thana Municipal Transport, Nashik Municipal Transport, and the Nagpur Municipal Transport. So these are all agglomerations which are going to convert significantly into electric vehicles. We have also said that to begin with, within the first 2 to 3 years, we would fully electrify 3 of our routes, which is Mumbai, Pune, Nashik, and Nashik, Mumbai, and then extend it to the rest of the state. We have a very long expressway coming up, which should get inaugurated by the end of this year, which is a 712-kilometer long expressway starting from Mumbai going all the way to Nagpur. And that entire expressway, as you know, is access controlled. It's a smart, intelligent expressway, and it is also fully electrified. So movement all the way from Mumbai to Nagpur, which is otherwise by air about 1,000 kilometers away, is fully electric, and with charging stations and all other related facilities en route. We believe that the future is Maharashtra is going to be electric, clean, and sustainable. Thank you, Arpit.
Mr. K.R. Jyotilal, while we are talking about reimagining mass transportation in the post-COVID world, what are your priorities for the current fiscal 2021 and 2022?
Yeah, as I said, in fact, one is go for the low emission technologies, whether it is e-mobility or the fuel cell or LNG or CNG, wherever you are able to do it. That is one clean priority, so that the clean air, as you said, as per Paris Convention, we should be responsible. Second is the reduce the accident by 50% immediately. Now we have reached 39%, and we achieve, look at maybe making Vision Zero. Then go 100% digital. That means zero cash. You bring open mobility network in all platforms so that you can seamlessly move from one to another, which we could do it in Kochi. We want to extend it to other cities. Then zero congestion. That means you plan the city in the say, there are 2 things. One is coordination versus integration. A lot of agencies, a lot of stakeholders involved. So the coordination rarely happens. So integration of various modes of transport, that is where the MTA, whether it's like it is a TFL equivalent or the Singapore LTA equivalent. So where you use the same system, same card, same as maybe the Maharashtra officer has mentioned, you should be able to point A to point B using a mobile. That is a transformation from mobile to mobility. So that is what is the then zero congestion and zero, that is through planning. Planning is the key, because urban planning as well as the transport planning has to gel together. So plan the city, you integrate rather than coordinate. Then last but not zero waste. There is no concept called waste. Everything is energy formed in a different way. Matter and energy are not different. There is Advaita. This is the land of Advaita, where Shankaracharya started. Every waste can be converted into energy. How we can make it happen. So this is, in a nutshell, is our vision for next 1 year. Thank you.
Thank you. I would go to Mr. Kalsad. Mr. Kalsad, your views on next-gen mobility and accelerating adoption of electric vehicles in Karnataka?
Well, Karnataka has been in the forefront of evolving electric mobility policy way back in 2017 itself. But however, when it comes to the actual implementation, I think we are slightly lagging behind in some of the states. Well, we all know that lower the dependency on the fossil fuels. Obviously, there has been a gradual shift to cleaner and greener vehicles like CNG, LNG, zero emission vehicles like battery operated electric vehicles, hybrid vehicles, etc. The next generation mobility will be obviously more sustainable, safer and intelligent, convenient and eco-friendly. So obviously in Karnataka also, as per the National Electric Mobility Mission Plan of 2020, under the FAME 2 guidelines of Government of India, which has been issued by the DHI, in Karnataka, we have both intercity as well as intra-city electric buses, which has been sanctioned to us under the OPEX model. For example, in Bangalore city itself, we have 300 buses, which is almost in the final stages of tender finalization. as well as intercity operations of Mofussil towns between Bangalore and other nearby bigger cities like Mysore, etc. There are another 100 buses. This is also under almost finalization stage. But then we need to upscale to the next level to ensure that we reach at least 20% of the fleet strength in the next 5 years or so. Obviously, the next big thing would be the electric buses, and to reach that, we need to enhance our infrastructure front also. So that's why the electric policy of government of Karnataka has come in a big way. And as stated by other colleagues also, both on the demand side as well as on the supply side, the incentive mechanism has been announced, and both the private entrepreneurs have shown a lot of keen interest, and we seem to have a lot of interest generated by the private industrialists as well. In regard to the demand side, you can assume that Bangalore city itself has the highest number of electric two-wheelers in the entire country. So that acts like probably the electric vehicle capital city of the entire country. So obviously it has a cascading effect on the terms of usage of the electric vehicles at the domestic level. From the public buses part of it, we act like probably information generating, and to ensure that in the years to come, public transport policy will definitely create more such initiative and interest in the electric vehicles. So obviously there is a clear tendency of moving away from the fossil fuels to the other non-conventional energy sources of funding this particular projects. So we have to see the future, and maybe in the next 5 years or so, where other states will be able to show the way to the country as well. Thank you.
Mr. Kalsad, if you can quickly tell us about your priorities for the current financial year.
Yes, the public transport should definitely get the primary attention. That's my feeling personally. And the government also is giving us a lot of incentives. The concept should be to motivate the public from moving away from the private vehicles usage to the public transport, be it the buses or the trains or the intercity trains or these public transport. Obviously, which is not just a cheaper mode, but also it's safer, and also it is a very convenient mode of travel. So I think that should be the major concern, and should be the priority also. From the government of India, my only appeal was, though they are concentrating more on other concepts, but the effort should be to support the RTCs. Obviously, the other colleagues are also part of the RTCs. They are heading the RTCs. Nowadays, the RTCs are having a huge problem. With the pandemic, there's a lot of stress on the sustainability of the RTCs themselves. So we need to reorient our strategies in such a way that on one hand, we get the government support, but also we should look at the other modes and models of sustaining this public transport. It could be on a lease model like the FAME 2, which has already given us this kind of a hope, but also ensure that the further modes of transport becomes more viable also. Thank you.
Thank you. Let me go to Mr. Vinay Kumar Singh. Mr. Vinay Kumar Singh, my next question to you is, can you share your views on accessible, connected, inclusive, and affordable public transport? How are you leveraging cutting-edge technology, though you talked a lot about technology in your previous questions, to enhance customer experience and provide hassle-free, safe travel experience to the commuters?
We are working on this regional rapid transit system, which is coming for the first time in our country. It is an interstate rail-based commuter railway system, which is akin to normal metros as we look at as far as station is concerned, but at the core of it, it is a high-speed rail system. So the whole objective of providing RRTS is to provide regional connectivity, a very seamless connection across the tier 2, tier 3 cities linking to national capital. And as I told you, we are working on multimodal integration to make the travel very convenient, very comfortable, and a good experience for commuters. Now, as rightly pointed out my colleague before me, if we make this travel comfortable and safe, then large number of people will leave their private vehicles and come to the public transport. We know that there is a challenge as of today due to pandemic, but very soon we know once the pandemic is curbed, by various methods, the people will come back to public transport. Only thing is we have to be ready to serve them in that way, particular way, so that they feel comfortable and safe while traveling on the public transport. So, but the accessibility, see, the whole purpose and objective is to make accessibility as good as possible. The moment we do it, automatically by the pull factor of this kind of facility, people will come to the public transport. And that is what we are striving for. And we are not only within NCRTC, but we are talking to our other counterparts in the public transport and even in the last mile connectivity modes, so that we can create a seamless movement for a passenger from one point to another. So once the corridor of the phase 1, which we are doing in Delhi and around, are completed, it will be a big network of networks of public transport, making life of commuters very easy, where people are spending 2 to 3 hours daily in commute in one side. It will come down to as low as 50 to 60 minutes. So reduction by 60 to 70% of the time, because it is a high speed railway system. So not only that we make the transport easy, the accessibility becomes so easy for whether it is education or for medical facilities or for business trips or maybe leisure trips during the weekends. So all this, that is the whole purpose of this strategic intervention or investment by the central and the state governments. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Singh. I would also like to know your priorities, your future plans, how you are planning to encourage mobility as a service when the priority section of the Delhi Ghaziabad Meerut RRTS corridor is targeted to be commissioned by 2023.
Yes, the target given to us is March 23 for the operational, but we are trying to prepone it in spite of COVID. And as I was mentioning, we are already talking to our counterparts, whether it is the last mile connectivity or it is the metro systems or railways or civil aviation, so that we can make it as seamless as possible. And one of my colleagues mentioned about the NCMC and a common mobility card. We are working on that. Our automatic fare collection system, from the day one, it will be open loop system using the NCMC card facility. And that card will be used in other modes of transport within the region also. So our focus is to commission the project as early as possible and simultaneously work on whatever we can do to make their journey comfortable, safe, and as punctual as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Singh. Dr. Jagtap, your concluding remarks, your views on usage of technologies, emerging technologies like artificial intelligence, IoT, cloud, data analytics for improving overall ecosystem of the next gen mobility.
So Arpit, when we are talking about Pune in particular again, PMPML started with the ITMS system way back in 2015-16. So we were lucky to have some kind of an AVLS system that was fitted with us within our system. And as per the AIS 140 norms, most of the buses that we have added in the last 2 odd years have come up with a lot of hardware and networking features, which help us to integrate and compile a lot of data that is available with us. Especially during the lockdown period when we were totally shut for almost 3 to 3.5 months, we were able to compile and go back on a lot of this data. And in fact, we were able to put this across on the integrated command control center of the Pune Smart City and work out different algorithms and different analytical platforms, which helped us to relook at our route rationalization. So this data became very much helpful to adopt for new areas, new routes, as well as to ensure that these assets and the buses that we had with us were put to a very different kind of a use, and they were fully utilized in a different way. So here, besides this data that we had with us on over a large period of time, the new kind of inputs that are gradually coming up with reference to the safety and security of the passengers, the kind of systems that we are able to provide on the app and the website to the citizens with reference to information is something that is becoming much more helpful. Now what has happened is there are new startups that have come up with us, especially the Software Technology Park of India, along with their e-mobility unit and the University of Pune, with whom we have an MOU. They have their startup environment where we have put a problem statement across, and where they have come up with quite innovative new ideas, where this data that we are able to compile from this overall urban mobility is being put to a very large use. And we are sure that this data, which after going through a process of artificial intelligence and everything, will help us to come to a much more kind of a predictive system, where real-time data with reference to the passenger mobility in and out of these buses on various routes, its usage across the timeline between the day and night, across the month as well as season, and festivities that come in between, will be a much larger factor to plan and ensure that optimum utilization of these resources happen. So what we can see is that technology has been an empowering factor over the period of time. If the same thing is correlated with our ticketing system as well as the card system, you get to know a lot of different economical analysis that outflow after this whole system, with reference to the CPK and EPK that has been maintained in each of these routes and buses, and not just for the particular day or particular bus, but each of these trips that are made by the different sectors. And this algorithm, with reference to when we're talking about for city of Pune, with about more than 2,500 buses running close to 22,000 different trips across the city and ferrying 12 lakh plus passengers, we see that this huge data that is coming out is now trying to make out sense by using this new kind of technology and this new kind of analytical parameters. And I'm very much sure with the intervention of MoHUA, where the data exchange program under the IUDX program and the Transport for All initiative that has been initiated, we'll be having much better inputs that are being followed by different cities in the same sector in India as well as from abroad, which will help us to incorporate and ensure that the new adoption of technology will be much more useful to ensure that the public transportation in itself as a body can suffice, as well as it can integrate with other sectors of the transportation media, and the multimodal transportation can also become a success. I think technology is here to stay for a larger period of time, and it will be the enabler for the future to take proper decision and to ensure a safe, secure, and a proper ride for the citizens at large.
With this, what I can say is the adoption of technology and implementation of digital services is the future of mobility, what I feel. With this, I would like to thank all the eminent panelists for their extremely valuable inputs and contributions to. With this, I conclude today's panel discussion, Reimagining Mass Transportation in India, post-COVID world, part of the second edition of ET Government Digitech Conclave. I would like to thank the eminent guest panelist, Ashish Kumar Singh, Additional Chief Secretary, Department of Home, Transport and Ports, Government of Maharashtra; K.R. Jyotilal, Principal Secretary, Transport and Managing Director, Kochi Metro Rail Limited, Government of Kerala; Shiv Yogi C. Kalsad, Chairman and Managing Director, Karnataka State Road Transport Corporation; Vinay Kumar Singh, Managing Director, National Capital Region Transport Corporation; and Dr. Rajendra Jagtap, Smart City and Mobility Expert. He is the former Chairman and Managing Director of Pune Mahanagar Parivahan Mahamandal, Government of Maharashtra. I thank all of you for sharing your knowledge and expertise at the second edition of ET Government Digitech Conclave 2021. Thank you so much.
Thank you.